On a quiet summer evening in the small town of Willow Creek, the idyllic facade of a perfect suburban life was shattered by an unimaginable act of violence. Sarah Williams, a devoted wife and mother of two, was found brutally murdered in her own home. The shocking crime sent ripples through the close-knit community, leaving everyone questioning how such a tragedy could have happened in a place where nothing ever went wrong. Sarah, 38, was known for her warm smile and her unwavering commitment to her family. She had been married to Matthew Williams for 15 years, and together they had built a seemingly perfect life. Matthew, a respected accountant, was often seen as the picture of stability and reliability. He worked long hours, but always made time for family dinners and weekend outings. To outsiders, they were the epitome of a happy couple. However, beneath the surface of their perfect life lay deep cracks that no one could see. Sarah had been struggling with anxiety and depression for years, a fact she kept hidden from all but a few close friends. Despite Matthew's best efforts, he couldn't seem to bridge the emotional distance that had grown between them. Their conversations had become stilted and perfunctory, focused mostly on the logistics of daily life rather than the love and connection they once shared. It was during this time of emotional turmoil that Sarah sought the help of Dr. Mark Harris, a well-regarded therapist specializing in marriage and family counseling. Dr. Harris was charismatic, empathetic, and had a reputation for helping his patients navigate even the most difficult of life's challenges. For Sarah, he was a beacon of hope in her darkest days. Their sessions started out as strictly professional, with Sarah discussing her feelings of inadequacy and loneliness. She spoke about her strained relationship with Matthew and her desire to find happiness again. Dr. Harris listened intently, offering words of comfort and advice that seemed to resonate deeply with her. Slowly but surely, Sarah began to rely on him more and more, finding solace in the attention and understanding that she felt was missing from her marriage. As the weeks turned into months, the boundaries of their professional relationship began to blur. Dr. Harris, who was married himself, found himself drawn to Sarah in a way he hadn't anticipated. Her vulnerability and beauty captivated him, and he couldn't resist the growing attraction he felt. It wasn't long before their sessions turned into something more. First lingering looks, then gentle touches, and finally, a full-blown affair. The affair provided Sarah with a sense of liberation she hadn't felt in years. With Dr. Harris, she felt alive and desired, but what she didn't realize was that this newfound passion was built on dangerous ground. Dr. Harris, despite his calm and collected exterior, had a dark side that very few knew about. He was possessive, and as their relationship deepened, his behavior became increasingly erratic. Sarah's newfound happiness did not go unnoticed by Matthew, who, though often preoccupied with work, had started to sense that something was amiss. He had noticed Sarah's growing detachment, the secretive phone calls, and the sudden increase in her therapy appointments. Concerned, he tried to talk to her about it, but Sarah brushed off his worries, insisting that everything was fine. It was on the night of July 15th, when Matthew was working late at the office, that the unthinkable happened. Sarah was found dead in their living room, her body covered in stab wounds. The brutality of the attack shocked even the most seasoned detectives. There were no signs of forced entry, which suggested that Sarah knew her killer. As the police began their investigation, they discovered a series of emails and text messages that revealed the torrid affair between Sarah and Dr. Harris. Dr. Harris was immediately brought in for questioning. He seemed calm, almost too calm, as he spoke about his relationship with Sarah. He admitted to the affair, but vehemently denied any involvement in her murder. He claimed that their last meeting had been a week prior and that they had ended things amicably. But as the detectives delved deeper, they uncovered troubling details about Dr. Harris's past. There had been complaints from former patients about inappropriate conduct, but nothing had ever been proven. His calm demeanor, once seen as a professional asset, now seemed more like a mask hiding a volatile and dangerous personality. The discovery of a hidden camera in Dr. Harris's office further complicated the case. The camera contained footage of Sarah's last therapy session, where the two had argued heatedly. Sarah had told him that she wanted to end their relationship, that she needed to focus on her family. Dr. Harris's reaction had been explosive. He had pleaded with her not to leave him, his desperation turning to anger when she refused to change her mind. This footage, combined with the fact that Dr. Harris's phone records placed him near the Williams home on the night of the murder, painted a damning picture. The evidence was mounting, but without a clear motive or a murder weapon, the case was far from closed. The police continued to piece together the puzzle, but every answer seemed to lead to more questions. Who was the real Dr. Harris? And what had really happened on that fateful night? As the investigation unfolded, detectives scrutinized every detail of Sarah's life, hoping to find clues that might lead to her killer. The discovery of the hidden camera in Dr. Harris's office was a breakthrough, but it only added to the complexity of the case. The footage showed the explosive argument between Sarah and Dr. Harris, with Sarah expressing her desire to end the affair. Dr. Harris's reaction was far from professional. He had begged her not to leave him, his voice rising to a near scream as he pleaded with her to stay. The police now had a motive: rejection. Dr. Harris had become obsessed with Sarah, and her decision to end things had pushed him over the edge. But they needed more than just a motive to convict him. They needed concrete evidence linking him directly to the crime. Detective Rachel Pierce, a seasoned investigator known for her keen eye for detail, took the lead on the case. She decided to revisit the crime scene, looking for anything that might have been overlooked. The living room where Sarah's body was found was still cordoned off, a gruesome testament to the violence of the attack. Blood splatter patterns on the walls and floor indicated a frenzied assault, and the number of stab wounds suggested intense rage. As she examined the scene, Detective Pierce noticed something odd: a small, barely visible mark on the edge of the coffee table. It looked like a tiny smear of blood, almost as if someone had brushed against it in a hurry. Carefully, she collected a sample and sent it to the lab for analysis. If it matched Dr. Harris's DNA, it would be the missing piece they needed. While waiting for the lab results, the detectives continued to piece together the timeline of the night of the murder. They knew from Dr. Harris's phone records that he had been in the area around the time of Sarah's death, but he had claimed to be visiting another patient nearby. They tracked down the patient, who confirmed that Dr. Harris had indeed visited, but there was a gap of over an hour between the end of the session and when he was next seen on camera driving away. This gap was crucial. It was more than enough time for him to go to the Williams home, commit the murder, and return to his car. But they still needed more. Then came the breakthrough they were waiting for. The lab results confirmed that the blood smear on the coffee table belonged to Dr. Harris. This was the physical evidence they needed to place him at the scene of the crime. With the motive, the hidden camera footage, and now this, they felt they had enough to bring him in for further questioning. Detective Pierce and her partner, Detective Tom Reynolds, arrived at Dr. Harris's office early the next morning. He seemed unsurprised to see them, his expression calm as he invited them into his office. But as they laid out the evidence they had gathered, his composure began to crack. "We have you on camera, Dr. Harris," Pierce began, her voice steady. "We saw the argument you had with Sarah. You were angry, furious, in fact. She told you she wanted to end things, and you lost control." Dr. Harris shifted in his seat, his eyes narrowing. "That's not true. I was upset, yes, but I would never hurt her," Pierce continued, unfazed. "You were in the area the night she was killed. You have no alibi for the time of the murder, and we found your blood at the scene." For a moment, there was silence. Then Dr. Harris spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "I didn't mean for it to happen." The detectives leaned forward, holding their breath. "What do you mean, Mark?" Reynolds asked, using his first name in a calculated move to make him feel more at ease. "Tell us what happened." Dr. Harris took a deep breath, his hands trembling. "I went to see her that night. I just wanted to talk, to make her understand. I couldn't let her go. She meant everything to me." He paused, his eyes filling with tears. "But she wouldn't listen. She kept saying it was over, that she was going to tell Matthew everything. I panicked. I didn't want to lose her, but I didn't want to ruin her life either. I tried to leave, but she stopped me. She told me to stay away from her family, that I was dangerous." His voice broke. "I lost control. I grabbed the knife. It was just there on the counter. I didn't even think. It all happened so fast. 1 minute she was yelling at me, the next, he trailed off, burying his face in his hands. Detective Pierce felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard many confessions in her career, but the raw desperation in Dr. Harris's voice was unsettling. "What did you do then?" she asked quietly. Dr. Harris looked up, his face pale. "I don't remember. I think I ran. I couldn't believe what I had done. I loved her. I didn't want to hurt her. It was enough." They had his confession, and with the physical evidence, it was more than enough to charge him with murder. Dr. Harris was arrested and taken into custody. The news of his confession sent shockwaves through the community. How could a trusted therapist, someone who was supposed to help people, commit such a heinous act? As Dr. Harris awaited trial, the police continued to build their case. They discovered more evidence, text messages he had sent Sarah, pleading with her not to leave him, and threatening to make sure no one else could have her if she did. It was clear that his obsession had turned deadly. The trial of Dr. Mark Harris began on October 12, 2008, and quickly became the most talked about event in Willow Creek's history. The courtroom was packed with reporters, curious onlookers, and grieving family members. As the prosecution laid out its case, the full extent of the horror that had unfolded on the night of July 15th came to light. Sarah's final moments were described in chilling detail. The prosecution painted a vivid picture of how Dr. Harris, driven by obsession and fear of losing her, had entered her home under the pretense of wanting to talk. When she insisted that their affair was over and threatened to tell her husband, his desperation turned to rage. As Sarah tried to walk away, he grabbed a kitchen knife and confronted her. The evidence showed that she had tried to defend herself. There were defensive wounds on her arms and hands, and blood spatter patterns indicated a struggle. But Dr. Harris, blinded by anger and fear, overpowered her. He stabbed her repeatedly, each wound more vicious than the last. The knife entered her chest, puncturing her lung and severing a major artery. The medical examiner testified that she would have bled out within minutes. The brutality of the attack was evident in the sheer number of wounds, over a dozen, each one a testament to his uncontrollable rage. The prosecution presented the hidden camera footage, showing the heated argument between them during their last therapy session. This, combined with the threatening messages he had sent and the blood evidence, left no doubt in the jury's mind that Dr. Harris had premeditated the attack. They argued that his obsessive need to control Sarah, coupled with his fear of losing everything, drove him to murder her in cold blood. Dr. Harris's defense team attempted to paint a different picture. They argued that he had acted in a moment of passion, that Sarah's rejection had pushed him over the edge. They tried to depict him as a man who had made a terrible mistake, not as a calculating murderer. But the evidence was overwhelming, and the jury remained unmoved. During the trial, Matthew Williams took the stand, his voice cracking as he recounted finding his wife's body. His grief was palpable, and the courtroom fell silent as he described the moment he realized she was gone. He spoke of their children, how he had to explain to them that their mother wasn't coming back. His testimony was a powerful reminder of the real human cost of Dr. Harris's actions. After just 3 days of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict, guilty of first-degree murder. The judge sentenced Dr. Harris to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the sentence was read, the courtroom erupted in a mixture of relief and sorrow. Justice had been served, but it could not bring Sarah back. In the aftermath of the trial, the Williams family struggled to pick up the pieces. Matthew sold the house where the murder had taken place, unable to bear the memories that haunted its walls. He moved with his children to a new town, hoping to start over, but the pain of losing Sarah and the betrayal of someone she had trusted lingered. Dr. Harris, once a respected therapist, now spent his days in a maximum security prison, a shell of the man he had once been. He had lost everything: his career, his family, and his freedom, all because of his inability to let go. His obsession had led him down a dark path, one that ended in bloodshed and tragedy. The case left a lasting impact on Willow Creek. The small town, once known for its tranquility, was now forever marked by the brutal murder that had shattered its peace. People whispered about it in hushed tones, and the story of Sarah Williams and Dr. Mark Harris became a cautionary tale about the dangers challenges of obsession and unchecked desire. In the end, the affair that was supposed to provide Sarah with the comfort she was missing in her life became the very thing that ended it. And for Dr. Harris, his desperate need to possess what he could not have destroyed everything he held dear.